Alright, so here we go. I want to show you what I've got set up. You could use your own flight controller to control the motors, to turn them on and off. But I have an extra Turnigy 9X here with a radio. And I just kind of unhooked all the wires, so I'm only using one wire at a time. That way I know for sure that my props won't spin up unless I have it plugged into here. So how I'm powering this, of course, on most ESCs, when you're plugging them in a flight controller, you take out your red wire. These look like they're plugged in, but they are I've pulled the pin out, so they're not even there in there. So I have to power this, and the way I power that is off eBay. I got these for $2.50, I think, a piece. These are adjustable step-down power converters, or power. You can set the power down rather, and it's a little adjustable. So you can see that right there. A little Phillips head. You can adjust it down from whatever voltage you're putting in down to whatever you need. In this case, I have it set at 5 volts. So I plug it into a battery pack so I can power this. Then I have another battery pack down here that I plug in here that powers my ESCs. And then, of course, then I have my controller over here that I use to, I got it set on the 3rd channel for the throttle. And one of the things, first thing, the prop ring and using the tissue paper was one of the biggest things that I've overcome when doing this. The second thing is that I want to be able to get a consistent number with what I was doing. In a lot of videos that I see people do, what they do is they run the throttle up to what they think is center. Are they really center? Are they a little bit slower? Are they a little bit faster? Not really sure, but the way I do it is I have a throttle trim set in where I've got my throttle at 0, but when I flip this switch, I have the motor come on 40%, and when I turn the switch off, of course, the motor kills. So no matter what I'm doing, when I flip that switch on, I have 40% going to the motor every time. That way, as I'm doing this, and when I'm changing the stuff up here, I want to be able to see the results on my phone using a vibration app of actually what I'm getting. So if I make a little change here and I throttle up to what I think was at before, but I may not be completely or absolutely 100% where I was before, I may see a better result. So I may want to fine tune this a little bit, turn it a little bit more, and I'll show you exactly what I'm going to do here in just a moment. So I turn this, and then I go ahead and turn my throttle up. And as you know, the varying speeds in your motors will cause different types of vibration. So if you're up a little bit higher than you were previously, then you may have a worse number. Then you could end up finding yourself chasing around this hub or trying to figure out what's going on, because if you're varying your RPM, you're varying in your vibrations. And if you can't get a consistent number with your phone that you got set or taped to your frame or however you're going to have it set up there, I tend to find that causes me problems. The next thing I had, and I will demonstrate exactly what I'm talking about, is this ring, this ring right here. This actually came with the motor, and I've got one sitting right here. And you have to excuse my dirty bench. I've been working quite a bit on this. Anyway, I don't know if you can see this. The light's kind of killing it. Move the light a little bit. This ring, see if I can get back off of here. This ring doesn't fit. I don't know if you can see me rocking that back and forth, side to side. There's just a little bit of difference in that, and I'll show you exactly what I mean by a little bit of difference. Let me grab my calipers here, and I'm going to measure this here. We've got roughly 190 thousandths, and so when I measure the inside of this here, I'm setting at 205 thousandths. So I've got, to make sure we got it good here, 201 thousandths. So I'm getting 11 thousandths difference between the center of this and the shaft of the motor. Well, I know it doesn't sound like a lot, and I will demonstrate it here shortly. But if you put this on here and you've got it kicked off to one side, it will change your dynamic balancing by a whole lot. And like I said, I'll demonstrate here in a moment. But that's what I wanted to point out, that just because this is rocking, this is one of the biggest battles that I've come across is when you put this on here. I'd really like to find, I have access to CNC machines, and I will probably end up making my own washers to go on here that will fit within 1 or 2 thousandths, so that I don't have this issue, because I've had to fight making sure that this is center when I get started. Anyway, this is a prop. This isn't the prop that we just got finished balancing, but it's one that I previously done and went ahead and installed it. And I haven't done anything to it. I just bolted it on. So I'm going to go ahead and plug our batteries in. This one's for the receiver. First I'm going to power up my transmitter. I'm going to make sure that my switch is up, because I got it set to where the switch is off, my throttle's down, because it's a little bit different. If the throttle's up, it will take off on you. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and plug this in. My receiver. Okay, got the red light on the receiver, that's good. I'm going to stay clear of these props just to make sure. Okay, so now that I'm plugged in, I'm going to go ahead and throttle up just a little bit. Okay, so now that I'm set there, I'm going to set my phone up here on top of my flight controller. I can get the... Okay. I've used several different vibrations app. In this particular one, it's called Smart Tools, and it has a vibrometer on it. And this one here I found to be the best, because it actually, and I'm sure there's other ones out there, but this particular one is the one that I found that worked best for me, because it gives me a number that I can physically see, and it doesn't show me X, Y, and Z, which that may be crucial. I don't know. So far, it's worked really well for me. But I can go in here and I can hit the menu button. I can hit calibrate, and so what this calibrate does is when it's setting up here, not being moved, not being touched, you want a 0, but you want barely a 0. So we're going to click this up. You can see it. Get it a little bit more. There, you can start seeing it twitch there. So I'm going to back this down just a little bit. And I want to get it to where... And I live in a house with hardwood floors in it. And so as just with me moving back and forth, you can see it changing. So that's something to keep aware of too. So I'm going to go ahead and back this down a couple more clicks. Try to stand perfectly still and keep that 0 from coming up. Still flickering between one. I'm going to go ahead and go down one more. Okay, I'm going to call that pretty good, so we're going to hit OK. If you go all the way up or go all the way down on this and you still can't get a steady 0, what you do is go back to menu, go back to settings, and then you go down here, cut baseline. And I have mine set at 1.2. And that's where it worked at for me, and it goes all the way up to 0. Basically, up to a certain point, it cuts it off to where you actually don't see the reading. But I have mine set at 1.2, and that's what I had to move to in order to get, when I moved to, open that back up. Smart Tools, okay. Cancel. Back up. Alright, so that's what I had to do to get my 0. Otherwise, it was staying at 1.2 or whatever. Alright, so now that you see that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead with my switch. I'm going to flip my switch on. I changed my... I'm going to have to really quickly go in here, and I'll show you with this what I'm doing. I changed my... my throttle trim, and I forgot to save it. So with this switch, I'm going to have to go ahead real quick and unplug this battery because I don't want it to come on me. So with this switch, you can see I'm at 0, 25%, 50, 75. Basically what that does is it puts the line from 1 all the way up here to the top like that. That's your curve from 0 to 100%. So when I flip the switch, you can see I already had a little bit of a curve in it, 13.5% curve in it. 0, 13.5. So what all I'm gonna do is on my second position of my flight mode switch right here, I'm gonna go to my L, which is my low, and I'm gonna turn that up to 40%. But wrong way. Don't worry about that it's going down. All we want is that when we're in this position with the throttle at 0, because you can see it dips down, we want throttle at 0, switch in the middle, we'll automatically get our 40%. 40% right there. Okay, then now I'm going to go ahead and save this by hitting menu. That way now, when I hit the switch, it'll be at 40%. So I'm going to set you back down and plug in the battery again. Okay, so as a test, we're going to make sure that we've got throttle by turning up. Okay, got the throttle going. Alright, now what I'm going to do, so that you can see this, hopefully, there we go. I'm going to flip my switch to 40%. And actually, that 0.6, that is really good for just bolting it on. Normally I get like a 2 or a 3. But that's pretty good. But now I'm going to show you, I'm going to turn this off. You've seen what that was, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen this off. And all I'm going to do, try to keep from moving the prop or anything else, all I'm going to do is I'm going to kick this washer. Make sure you got it in the shot here. All I'm going to do is I'm going to kick this washer back and forth. I don't know if you can see me moving that. I'll move it all to one direction. Then I'm going to tighten this down, just right where it sets. And so we were under 1, basically, under 1. So we'll come back over here. Stop moving, so we get a 1. Move this controller so I don't get hit with the blade when I turn it on. Okay. Camera to focus. Turn this on so we're at 1. Look there. 1.4, 1.5. The only thing I did was move that ring over. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take and I'm going to move that ring back over a different direction so you can see how much it changes. So I was all the way over one direction, now I'm going to go all the way up that direction just to see how it comes out. I'm trying not to move the prop. The only thing I'm moving right now is just the washer. Come back over here. Focus on there. Okay, now I'm going to turn it on. Keep from moving the table. Haven't changed any, but there it won't sit there. But as you can see, just moving that washer will change the readings that you get. So that's something that I've had a really big time problem with trying to get this to come out, because what would happen is normally what I do is I'll loosen this up a little bit, and what I'll do is I'll just turn the prop. I'll turn it back on, see what my reading is. Right now I'm at 1.5, 1.4. Turn the prop a little bit more. So what I was doing is I got this just almost perfect down around the 5 or 6 mark. And what happened was I took and all I did was I tightened this up. Well, when I tightened this, it twisted that washer. When it twisted that washer, it was lopsided one way and it turned it this direction. Well, when it done that, and I tested it again to see what I was at, well, I was back up to 1.2. So that's when I realized that this washer right here, if it doesn't fit this shaft perfectly, will cause you some issues when you move it around. So the first thing I would do when you get started doing this is I take a Sharpie again and I will mark on the side of this prop somewhere on the side of it. And I actually already have a mark there, but I'm going to make another mark. And I'm going to turn this on this particular motor. These are the Sunny Sky motors. There's the 3 screws. Get the camera to focus. on the top here that bolts this prop adapter to the top of the motor. There's 3 of them. You can't see that when it's under the blade. But the first thing I do is I take my line and I'm going to turn it to the 1 screw. Focus camera. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to take and I'm going to turn that to the 1 screw. And I'm not going to pick up the camera every time and show you what I was getting, but I'll verbally say what I'm getting. Right now I'm getting, if I stop moving, getting a 0, turn it on. Now I'm getting a 1.6, 1.5. I didn't move it much from where I was at. I didn't tighten this down really tight, so I should be able to just take and move the prop on the hub itself to the next screw. And basically I want to see where I'm at every time I turn it. Right now I'm on 1.4, 1.5. It's actually a little bit better. So now I'm going to take and I'm going to move it to the next screw. Turn it on. And right now, I'll show you. Stop moving. Sitting at a 1. Kind of bouncing under 1. So 1.2. And all I did was push the prop on. Okay, so now that I found that little bit of a sweet spot, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, judging by the mark that I made on the prop right here, lined up with that screw, I'm going to rotate this prop this direction to the edge of the screw, not the center of it. And then I'm going to test it again and see what I get. Whether I get something better or something worse. It's actually a little worse because I'm jumping between 1 and 3 instead of 9 and 2. So if it's a little bit worse, I'm going to turn the prop the other direction using the screw and this line as the gauge. So turn it to the opposite side of the screw here. Turn it back on. So I'm getting between a 1. Pretty close. I'm getting between a 1 and a 2. 1.1 and 1.2. That got better, so I'm going to go ahead and twist it just a little bit more that same direction this way. Turn it back on. And now I'm getting between 0.9 and 0.1.2, so it's getting better. Go ahead and turn it just a little bit more. Hasn't gotten any better, it's staying about the same. I'm going to turn it just a little bit more. I got a feeling that when I turn this, it's actually going to get worse. Actually, it's a little better. So I'm going to keep going that direction. I got a pretty good size Sharpie there. I'd say 100 thousandths width of a line there. So I'm just moving just a little bit every time I turn it. So I've seen a 0.8 there. 0.1. And I'm going to just keep turning this until I get a good number that I'm satisfied with. So I'm getting a 0.8 to a 0.9. A little bit more. Okay, now I'm starting to get worse again. So I'm going to go ahead and go back just that little bit that I moved, back the other direction that I came from. Okay, I'm getting between a 0.8 and a 1.0. So I'm going to call that, in relation to where the prop is on the motor, I'm going to call that good. Now, this is the next step. When you don't have washers that fit your props or your motor shafts very decently. And I'm going to see if I can get some light on this so you can see it maybe. Hopefully. Kind of blinds it a little bit. So we get it a little closer. Move this around where we get a good visual on this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to reach over and turn it on. And then actually I'm just going to use the throttle stick, turn it up slowly. I don't know if you can see it. I'm going to kill it. Can't really see it on camera. At least not on this video screen. But what you can see is this washer right here kind of doing a little like this movement. It's not really spinning true on here. So now that I've got my prop where I think it's in the best position in relation to the motor, so now I'm going to squeeze this washer around and try to get some better results out of it. Basically, I'm going to try to center this now. So before I start squeezing on that, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and tighten this to what I would call tight, without trying to move the prop. Now, I don't get these necessarily really tight, but I try to get them fairly tight. So before I do anything else, I'm going to go ahead and turn it on and see what my meter is telling me, because when I turn this washer. Now, I've probably made my reading worse up there, or better. Maybe we get lucky. So it's actually gone up to 1.3 now instead of 0.8 to 0.1 or 1.0. So what that means is when I've twisted this washer, it's thrown it out of kilter just a little bit. And the way I do this is I got to get an idea of where this is running out. And it takes some kind of steady hands to do this. I'm going to turn the throttle on just a little bit, just enough for it to come on. Now I'm actually going to sit down to do this. And I have a Sharpie here. It's a metallic marker. I don't know if you can see that or not. It's just silver. My other chair here. That one not working. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to be very careful not to hit the prop. I'm going to come like that, watching the camera, not what I'm doing. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to try to touch the top of that washer. Just barely. I think I went too much. Kill the throttle and see what we got. Yep, I went too much. Wipe that back off. And I'll show you what this does as soon as I get it right. Turn the throttle back on. Just enough to where it spins. I may have touched it again too much. Yep. Try one more time here. It's kind of difficult to do. I'm going to have to rig up some kind of arm that I can hold this pin perfectly still, and then just kind of reach over and touch it without touching it too much. Turn the throttle back on to its minimum. Actually, looking at this washer, it looks like it may be running pretty true when I turned it that last time. Let's see, let me check it now. Okay, you can see what I'm talking about here. You have a really light touch when you do this. Okay, focus camera. Okay, I don't know. You turn around here so get the glare off of all of this. Okay, so what we're looking at is that silver line. You can see it's a little thicker right here. As I spin it around, you'll see right here, I don't know if you can see it in the camera, but right there, that line disappears. So I got it all the way around, and it doesn't touch right here. So what that tells me is that this washer is pushed out this way, because from this direction, because I didn't touch it right here. So what I'm going to do now, I hate doing this, but I really don't know how else to do it, is I'm going to take my pliers and I'm going to try to squeeze that washer over that direction that I didn't touch. Just a little bit. Another method that I've tried doing is to see how close I am is using calipers. Measuring from the back side of the nut to the washer to see how close I am. That works too. But it's really hard to get a good accurate measurement because you're dealing with an angle there instead of in a kind of a round part. It's really hard to measure, but I can tell just by looking at it that I still need to go over some more. So I'm going to see if I can squeeze that over some more. Oop, and I moved it way too much. See if I can move it back some. Okay, so before I do anything else, I'm just going to spin the prop and see what we got. And all I did now, mind you, is move that washer a little bit. So I went from a 0.8 to a 0.1 to a 0.1, 0.3. So that's all I did was move that little bit of a washer, and I'm getting a little bit of a different reading here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and pause the camera, and I'm going to mess with this because it may take me, sometimes I can do it in 5 minutes, sometimes it takes me half an hour. Just kind of depends on how much I got to fart with this stupid little washer right here to get it in center. But like I said, ideally I think the best thing for me to do is to make some of my washers myself, so that way when I drop them on here, it's got a 1 or 2 thousandths clearance. So when I put them on here, they're perfectly in center with the shaft of the motor. But anyway, I'm going to put you on pause, and then when I come back, I'll show you my results. Okay, so this one was a butt. It took me probably about 20 minutes to get this balanced out to where I would call it the best I could get it. Come to find out that I don't know if my motor's out of balance, which I don't think it is, because before I started all this process, and I can show you in just a moment when we spin up this other motor over here that doesn't have anything on it, my vibrations were really low, so I don't think that was it. I don't know if it was something with my prop wasn't quite balanced out, or maybe the nut or the washer, but I actually had to end up running this just a little bit off center to get this to come out good. But I'm going to show you the results that I got. Wait till everything goes to zero, ain't moving it around, I'll turn it on. Now mind you, this is at 40% throttle. I'm seeing a 2 in there, there's a 1. Not hardly flashing over 1.0. Now, if you do this, keep in mind that depending on where you put your phone at to do this, you may get different numbers. If you put it directly onto the frame, you're probably going to see higher numbers, and that's not necessarily bad. It's just going to be different from mine. And what the reason that is because I have I tried to do as much as I could to control the vibrations, actually getting to the flight controller, and essentially that is what we want to accomplish through balancing or anything else that we do, is want to limit the amount of vibrations going to this, because everything in here is very sensitive, and the less vibrations going to it, the better it's going to fly, regardless if the rest of the machine is actually vibrating a little bit. So the better you can keep this stable, the better it's going to fly, regardless of anything else. But what I did is I bought this. This is a 3D printed mount here, and I got some of this vibration absorbing sticky gel stuff on Zoltan, or I can't remember exactly the name. It starts with a Z. That I mounted this on here, and the reason I'm putting my phone on top of my flight controller, because essentially that is what I want to see, because that is what matters. You know, getting the vibration out is one thing, but I want to see what's actually getting to the flight controller. And this is why with this Mini X, it has a black box recorder on it, and I can actually see my vibrations when I'm flying. So I can be able to see if everything that I'm doing here is actually helping it or if it's not. But I tend to think that it's going to help it. But anyway, I want to go ahead and actually do a manual throttle now. Now this is not without the throttle curve. This is just going to be straight me running the stick. But I wanted to show you that the different throttles produce different vibrations. And in my particular motor and setup and everything, around the 40% was where I seen the highest vibration. So that's where I worked from, was at my 40% throttle. It may be different depending on your application and how your frame's set up, and everything else is different from frame to frame. So keep that in mind. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and spool this up. And I don't know what percent I'm running at right now, but I'm just going to slowly kind of go up with it. And you can see as faster I go, the more my vibrations creep up. It gets to a spot in there where it almost completely goes away. Going to speed it up. And now they're starting to climb again. I'm almost up to 1, and I'm about half throttle almost. That right there is about half throttle. You can see how the vibrations climb. And then there's a spot in there that they kind of drop off a little bit. Right there's about 55%. Anyway, that's basically in a nutshell how I do this. Always when you're doing this, I always feel it when I've got it here at 40%. I feel it as I go. I just kind of sit down here and I feel it. Every time I make an adjustment, I feel it. I see the phone, but I also want to feel it. It would be nice at some point where I don't even need the phone. I can just completely do it by feel. But the phone is definitely a nice reference because you have a baseline that you can go off of. And the main thing when I'm doing this is keeping the exact throttle, varying it even 2 or 3%. As you've seen, as I increase or decrease the throttle, will change the reading that you're getting. And you won't know exactly whether you're helping it or if you're making it worse if you're not getting the consistent amount of throttle. So I strongly suggest if you do this to set up a controller that has a throttle curve in it with a mode switch, and kind of like what I got here. I just had this laying around, so it worked out really well. I normally control this with a Taranis, and I could do the same thing with a Taranis, but since I had this laying around, I just kind of threw it on there. It worked really well. And the only thing I want to say is that this is dangerous. If you hurt yourself doing this, don't blame me for it. Keeping in mind that all my ESCs are powered up right now. And the motors could spin, but as far as I'm concerned, as long as these wires are not connected to anything telling it to turn on, I haven't ever had an issue with them coming on and hurting me. But it is dangerous. Just be careful of the props, when you're doing this, because I've kind of hit my fingers getting too excited to get down there and to stop the prop as it's spinning by grabbing out a ring right here to kind of help slow it down and speed the process up. But this really has helped the most. So to recap on this, the prop rings are a big problem as far as I've ran into, is getting these things to where they actually fit in the hub and true. And the next thing is this the washer here can cause issues with it being shifted one direction or another. But anyway, I wanted to share. This is what I've came up with, and it seemed to be the best so far. And I've tried many other things. I've tried different balancers, and this has come up to be the best results that I have reached. And anyway, I've got one more to do, and I'm going to do that. And then I've got another couple more videos that I'm going to do. I'm going to go into detail with the wiring a little bit more, how I hook that up. And some of this I'm going to change as I go and it has already changed some. Because as I do a little bit different here and getting this thing set up exactly what I want to end up changing a little bit more. But one of the things I want to go over was with this gimbal. One of the things that it is, and most gimbals are for GoPro Hero 3 or a GoPro camera period, which those are really expensive at this point in the hobby. I'm more concerned spending the money on the quadcopter itself and the controller. I just bought a Taranis that set me back quite a bit. But I use a different type of camera to record with for now. At some point I'm going to get a GoPro, but for now I'm definitely going to go into that, what issues I had with that and what I had to do to correct that. So if people are on a budget like me, don't want to really spend $500 on a good GoPro or $400 even, what they can do to modify the gimbal there so it would actually, and I haven't had any problems with it, runs really well. But anyway, that is my scoop on balancing props. I hope that it helps somebody, because the frustration at times is definitely nerve-wracking. The only other thing I suggest while doing this is if you do one, I do one at a time. I balance it. I come over here, put it on the quad, and dynamically balance it. And when I get that done, I go drink a beer or go sit down and watch some TV for a minute and come back and work on it some more, because it seems like for myself, I kind of slack on trying to get it perfect if I'm standing here for 2 or 3 hours doing this. So definitely take a break and take your time at it, because this will improve your performance the way your quad flies dramatically by doing this. Anyway, that's all I got for now. Thanks for watching.